What started off this path that I find myself on is that I was curious about certain things. I was curious about the world, and I wanted to ask a bunch of questions about, well, really pretty much everything. And I find that if you keep asking why questions, you eventually either A, get tired, or B, become a theoretical physicist or mathematician. And so many of the deepest questions led to a kind of disciplined way of thinking about the world, where we see all of the complexity in the world around us as being built up from very simple and beautiful patterns. And I think it was my desire to contribute to that story, in particular with theoretical physics, that began my path. But at the time that I really emerged as an adult, theoretical physics was in a great deal of difficulty and trouble. And I think as I came to understand that there was a big story that was going to affect everything that I cared about. It was going to affect the markets, it was going to affect our families, our sense of ourself, our security. And that story is the story of what happens when humans get addicted to high levels of broadly distributed, stable, technology-led growth, and then are denied the ability to continue on that path. That means that you're set up potentially for war, for civil unrest, for communism if people try to grab what their neighbor has, or fascism if people try to maintain order at all costs. I define this thing called an ego, or an embedded growth obligation. And an embedded growth obligation is how fast a structure has to grow in order to maintain its honest positions. So if you have a situation in which you have trial lawyers and they're supported by various associates, and the associates all want to become partners and trial lawyers themselves, then what you have is you have a situation where the law firm has to grow at a very fast clip if all those people are going to be satisfied with their job decisions. Well, very quickly that ability to grow runs out. And then people want to know, why am I stuck in a position going nowhere? Well, the same thing was happening in theoretical physics. It was happening in mathematics. It was happening in the pension funds. It was happening absolutely everywhere except for a small number of places like startups and hedge funds, which for a period of time were able to buck that trend. And as I came to understand that we were in some sort of society-wide Ponzi scheme since the late 60s, early 70s, and that there was no way to continue to grow our way out using the previous tools, I started to understand that society was going to be lying about almost everything at almost all times. And that's a very terrifying thought to have. We have effectively entered a period in which we cannot trust our experts. And I think that what began as a desire to contribute and to do real work ended with an understanding that we've got 2 generations of institutional experts that are corrupted, and that we cannot wake up from this crazy fever dream that we're all in because we can't figure out who we can still trust. The doctors are compromised, the professors are compromised, the journalists are compromised, the politicians are compromised. About the only thing that isn't badly compromised are people with an independent source of sustenance. Individuals in very small groups are about the only thing that is free of this disease of the embedded growth obligation. And so the paradox is that the individuals have to save the institutions that are trying to extinguish them, because the institutions don't want to hear this message. But in fact, if they don't make use of the tiny number of people functioning as individuals or in small organizations, all of this is going to collapse, because it cannot continue along its current exponential path. That exponential gave out a long time ago, and it's like Wile E. Coyote running off of the cliff. As soon as he realizes that there's nothing holding him up, down we fall. There's 2 games here. There's trying to get the best deck chairs on the Titanic, and there's trying to rescue the ship. And in general, nobody can think of how to rescue the ship, which is a daunting task. So instead, what we're doing is we're fighting for position in a losing game. And it's important that that stop.